Hi, everyone. Greetings from Washington, D.C. My name is Katie, and I work at the National Archives, and I am thrilled to be connecting with you all today. Today's presentation is going to be interactive, so I will be asking you to use that chat box to send me responses to my questions, to do a little primary source analysis as we dive into the United States Constitution. If I miss any of your questions during the program, you can always ask them again. We'll try to leave some additional time for Q&A at the end of my presentation. But right now, I want to go ahead and dive in. So let me switch my screen to my next slide here. You should now see the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. on your screens. And if we go to my next slide, we can see an image of a room we call the Rotunda. Taking a look at this image, how would you describe this space? What adjectives come to mind? Go ahead and use that chat box to send me one word you would use to describe the room on your screen. Historic, open, these are great descriptive words. Fancy or majestic, old, big, spacious, absolutely. These are wonderful words. If you were to walk into this space, you could tell that this is an important room just based on the architecture alone. The rotunda was designed to evoke these feelings. And if we look at these cases in this photograph, we can find the Charters of Freedom, our nation's founding documents. The National Archives preserves and protects these documents and makes them available to the public. So we have the Declaration of Independence on the left, the Constitution in the center, and the Bill of Rights on the right. Today's program is going to focus on the United States Constitution. These 4 pages, which contain 7 different articles or sections that set up the United States. Now, before we dive into my program, I want to hear from you all. What's something you already know about the United States Constitution? Use that chat box. If you think you know one thing, you can send me about the United States Constitution. Oh, I'm seeing some great thoughts coming in. It sets up the laws. It's old. It sets up our framework of government. Absolutely. It's an important document. Absolutely. It has many amendments. Definitely. These are, you all already know a lot about the Constitution. If we think about the United States, first we have the Declaration of Independence, which declares that the United States ought to be free and independent states. And then the United States Constitution tells us what our government is going to look like, who's going to be in charge, who's going to have power, how we're going to run the United States. And it does this by setting up our framework of government, those 3 branches of government you may have studied, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. It establishes the supreme law of the land. It helps protect our rights. Now, I know sometimes it can be difficult to think about how a document that is over 230 years old can connect to our lives today. But the Constitution can actually connect to our lives in a lot of different ways. When we think about the work of these 3 branches of government and all of the details that we can find in this document. So today, our focus is going to be on taking this Constitution and connecting it to our life today and giving you all new ideas of why this document might matter to you now. And we're going to do this by looking at some other primary sources from the National Archives. We're going to find one document that we can connect back to each article of the Constitution and make some connections to our own lives today. I'm going to do this by asking you to help me with some primary source analysis. So I'm going to show a document on our screen. I want you to take a look and think about, how would you describe the document? What details do you notice? Sometimes when we look at a primary source, we like to ask a lot of W questions. Who created it? Where is it from? What is it about? When is it from? Why was it made? So you can think about answering those questions too. Also zoom in on some of the parts of the document to help give us a clearer look. And then we're going to take each document and connect it back to the United States Constitution. So let's start with a document that shows us something from Article 1, the first big section of the Constitution. So here's our first document. Again, just start by sending me some details that you notice. Or if you're watching this program with your siblings or other family members, you can chat out loud as well. But go ahead and use that chat box to send me some details that you observe on this document. What do you think this is? Ooh, we're finding some good details. We're finding some keywords. We can see the word bank. It looks like a house. It looks like a map. It's talking about banking and wages. Absolutely. Kind of looks like a blueprint. Maybe this is a plan for something. Is it the Monopoly board? You know, that's a good connection. Let's zoom in and see if we can find some more information that tells us what this document is. All right, if we zoom in at the top of this page, can we find any more keywords that tell us what we're looking at? A game board, absolutely. Now, this isn't just the game board itself. What type of document is this? It's a model, close, a patent, absolutely. This is a patent for a game board. A patent is something you can apply for to protect your idea for an invention. Can anyone find the date for when this game board was patented? Excellent, January 5th, 1904, so we can learn some new information about this game board patent. Now, this is not the patent for Monopoly, but it would inspire that game later on down the road. But let's zoom in and see if we can find the name of the inventor of this game. Now this is going to take some, we're going to have to read some cursive here, but if we look here under inventor, we can see the signature of Lizzie J. Maggi. This is her idea for this game that she has patented. This idea, she's gotten a patent to protect her invention. Now wait a second. You may be thinking, I thought we were talking about the Constitution today. How does this connect the Constitution? Well, let's take a look. According to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Congress shall have the power to promote the science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. That exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries, that's a patent. So Congress sets up this power for inventors to be able to get patents to protect their ideas. Let's think about this for a moment. Why might this ability to get a patent to protect your invention encourage you to go into the sciences or the useful arts? How can the ability to get a patent encourage people to become inventors? Take a moment to consider so you can have one. So they can benefit from their discoveries? Absolutely. If you're going to go into if you're going to be able to invent something, spend all that time, a patent allows you to secure your idea, and so may encourage you to go into the sciences or the useful arts. So we can connect this power of Congress to this game board patent and connect this game board patent back to the Constitution. According to Article 1, Congress has the power to promote discovery by protecting patents for new inventions. Absolutely. So this is one example of a document that shows us the Constitution at work. Another question I want us to think about is, how is the Constitution relevant to our lives today? Anyone have any ideas about how this ability to get a patent might matter to your life today? Anyone here think they may want to be an inventor someday? Has anyone already invented something before? All right, we've got quite a few inventors connected today. That's excellent. Well, you may go through that process of getting a patent someday, and that connects back to the Constitution. Even if you're not sure about becoming an inventor someday, take a look around your room. Can you find an example of an invention that we may be able to find a patent for here at the National Archives? What are are some other examples of important inventions around you that we might have patents for at the archives? Oh, I'm seeing some great examples, from different clocks to light bulbs to calculators to all sorts of interesting ideas to toys like the game board we saw here. Yes, at the National Archives, you can find examples of all sorts of different inventions, different patents. We even have Thomas Edison's patent for the light bulb. So there are a few ways we can connect this idea of patents from the Constitution to our lives today. Now, that's just one example of a power of Congress. Article 1 is the longest article of the Constitution, but today we're taking a sampling of all the different articles today, finding different examples to connect the Constitution back to our lives. So we're going to move on to article number 2. And you all are doing such an excellent job of this on-the-spot document analysis already. I'm very impressed by the details you're finding. Keep up the great work. Let's take a look at a new primary source, a new document. All right, start with your initial observations. What details stand out to you? What are we looking at? What type of document is it? What details do we notice? We've got a map. We've got a map of the United States. Oh, we're seeing it's labeled Louisiana Purchase. Absolutely. There's a red section outlining the Louisiana Purchase. Fantastic. Great attention to detail. Ooh, we're noticing that this is map number 4. Maybe it comes from a series. Excellent. Let's zoom in and see if we can get any more information about this particular map. Can we learn anything else about this Louisiana Purchase when we zoom in on this little box? Oh, we're finding a date. Yes, what happened on April 30th, 1803, according to this label? Yes, the United States purchases this Louisiana Purchase from France, and they do it through a treaty. A treaty is an agreement between two countries. You may have heard or studied peace treaties that end wars before. You may have studied or heard about economic treaties, environmental treaties. They're how countries work together. So let's think about how we can connect this idea of a treaty that allows the United States to purchase this territory from France, and think about how we can connect it back to the Constitution. I'm going to show another excerpt from the Constitution. And according to what we see on the screen, who has the power to make treaties? Take a look at that text and see if you can decide, who does the Constitution give the powers to create treaties, to make treaties? Ah, excellent. I'm seeing lots of different answers come in. The President, the Senate, but it is indeed the President with the approval or consent of the Senate. Sometimes when we talk about the Constitution, we talk about checks and balances of our different branches of government sharing powers. This is one of those examples. The President has the power to make treaties, but the Senate has to approve the treaties in order for them to go into effect. So in this case, Thomas Jefferson sent envoys to France to negotiate this treaty of Louisiana Purchase, but then in order for it to go into effect, the Senate had to approve it. And they did, which dramatically changed the United States. So how does this document show the Constitution at work? We're seeing that power to create treaties, to make treaties in action. How does this government power to make treaties, how is this relevant to our lives today? Whether it's specifically about the Louisiana Purchase or other treaties you may have studied. Why does this matter to us? Send me a chat if you think you have some ideas. Thinking of some other treaties that have ended wars, absolutely. Helps us to understand the history. Think about how without the treaty, we wouldn't have these other states. Yeah, thinking about someone made the connection that the United States is purchasing Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon. Excellent. We have so many amazing historians connected today. Yeah, in fact, some of you may even be living in this part of the United States today that was added to the United States through this treaty. So it changed the size of the United States, where we travel, who the thinking about who lives in the United States. It makes some pretty big changes. So in this case, it may impact where you live or where you travel within the United States and future states added to the US. And treaties can, right, they've impacted just even the size of the United States, allowing for, yeah, additional territories in future states. Excellent job, everyone. All right, well, as I mentioned, we're cruising through the Constitution today, just seeing a handful of examples of these articles in action. So let's move on to Article 3 of 7. All right, here's our first document. So again, we'll start with your initial observations, keywords you find, dates, names, and then I will zoom in so we can take a closer look, since I know there's a lot of text involved in this document. Excellent. So we've got the Supreme Court of the United States. Very good. Some of us noticed this is the October term, 1954. Someone has found the keywords of Oliver Brown and Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas. This is Brown. This is the case known as Brown versus the Board of Education. I see some people making connections. Maybe some of you have studied this case before. Let's zoom in to the bottom of the page, see if we can find any additional information of what this court case is all about. Great. So we're noticing, okay, we've got a specific date for this document, May 31st, 1955. Some of you have noticed this is from Chief Justice Warren. Yeah, and this is about the right of education. Absolutely, great connection. Yeah, in this, if we look a little closer at this text, it's ordered that the district court takes such proceedings and enters such orders and decrees consistent with the opinion of this court are necessary and proper to admit to public schools on a racially non-discriminatory basis. So Brown versus the Board of Education was a court case that challenged laws in states that created separate schools for white students and African American students. These schools did not have equal resources. Children did not have access to the same quality of education. So in Brown versus the Board of Education, Oliver Brown and others across the country challenged these laws, and their case made it all the way to the Supreme Court that finds these separate schools are not just. So if we go back to the Constitution, we can connect this Supreme Court document to Article 3, which tells us about the powers of the Supreme Court, that there's going to be the Supreme Court of the United States able to make these decisions that impact people across the entire country. So the Constitution makes the Supreme Court the highest court in the land. How can we connect this document to our lives today? Anyone have any ideas? Give you a moment to send some chats to the chat box. Yes, makes things fair, absolutely. Thinking about equal rights. Thinking about being able to go to school together. The Supreme Court plays a role, I see a comment, in resolving these cases. Absolutely, the Supreme Court shows us the Supreme Court can also play a role in making sure Americans are treated fairly. Excellent observations. So in these three documents, we've seen just one example of some of the powers of Congress, the President, the Supreme Court. Our three branches of government are covered in Articles 1 through 3 of the Constitution. However, we've got a total of 7 articles to cover today, which means we have some additional powers of the federal government to take a look at today. So let's move on to Article 4. All right, so let's think about those W questions. Who, can we find any who's Can we find any dates? When is this from? Can we find any information that tells us what this document is talking about? Take a moment, read through this document, process this information, and then we'll discuss. Oh, wow, great observations. Excellent. So we've got a letter to the president. Very good. From Cheryl Byland, who is 8 years old. And Cheryl Byland has a new idea for a flag for the United States. Amazing. Now, good question. We see a notation up here. It's hard to tell exactly what that says. I saw some people guessing maybe it's a date, maybe a notation from the president's office. We've got another date over here. If we look at this pencil marking, looks like the year maybe 1958. Excellent details. But what's prompting Cheryl to send the president her idea for this new flag? Can we find any more information? What's happened that has motivated Cheryl to come up with a new flag for the United States? Adding a state. The 49th state, exactly. Anyone know which state was number 49? Alaska, well done. Yeah, Hawaii is going to be number 50, but Alaska is number 49. You all are noticing too that the stars in Cheryl's design spell out USA. She also has a little note at the bottom. You may have seen that too. I'm sorry to disturb you. But she's sending her idea for this new flag because the United States has a new state to the president. Now, did they take Cheryl's suggestion for her new flag? No, they did not. But they did add a new star to the flag for Alaska and for Hawaii. And the idea here that Cheryl sent her letter to the president, and we still have this letter today, is a pretty powerful one. You all have the same power to write to the president or your elected officials, or maybe on a local level, to share your ideas for the country. It's a right you all have. And in this case, what's prompting Cheryl to send her idea in is this idea of adding a new state to the United States. And we can connect this idea back to the Constitution. Article 4 tells us about this process. They were thinking in advance as they were writing the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution. We need a process in place if we're going to add new states. So Article 4 outlines that process, tells us that new states may be admitted by Congress into the Union, which prompts Cheryl to send this letter to the president. And yes, this is the last time Alaska and Hawaii, the last time we added states to the United States. So we're seeing in this document, okay, Constitution allows for new states to be added to the United States. Why does this matter to us today? Well, how many states did we start with? 13, and how many do we have today? 50. That's a lot of new states that have been added over the years. And think about all those new things that are added to the United States as we add new states, new people, new resources, new places to travel within the United States, new cities. Absolutely. In fact, this impacts where people live today in the United States, where we travel within the United States. Some of you all may be living in some of those new states beyond the original 13, and that is a process built into the Constitution itself. All right, amazing work, everyone. We're gonna keep moving along and take a look at our next document. Article 5. Let's find out what Article 5 is all about. So let's go through this same procedure. You all know the drill. Take a look at the document. Tell me your initial observations. Oh, that's a good point from the Constitution. Some of us may not even be connecting from states. We also have some parts of the United States that are not officially states yet. Excellent point. All right, so taking a look at this document, what are we observing here? What keywords stand out to you? All right, we're seeing joint resolution. We're seeing 66 Congress, amazing. We're seeing the signature of the Vice President of the United States / President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Women's suffrage, yeah, what is this joint resolution proposing? Let's zoom in and take a closer look. Oh, great, noticing that this is yep, we've got this joint resolution from the Congress of the United States. Yes, the right to vote, the right of suffrage. Suffrage means the right to vote to women. What is this joint resolution proposing exactly, though? What is that key word that this joint resolution is proposing? What is going to extend the right of suffrage to women? An amendment, yes. So an amendment is a change to the Constitution, right? This is a little different than when Congress proposes a bill to become a law and the president signs it into law. This is an amendment to the Constitution. An amendment means to change. Can anyone find the date of this document? It's actually spelled out in words. Let's see if we can piece it together. Very good. So we've got May 19th, 1919 or 1919. So we have this joint resolution telling us that the Senate and the House of Representatives have approved this amendment to the Constitution. This is outlined in Article 5 of the Constitution. It tells us how the Constitution can be amended or changed. However, we're just seeing the first step here that starts with Congress. There's a second step that has to happen. We can find the second step described in this paragraph here, because it's not just 2/3 of Congress that are required to amend the Constitution. You also need 3/4 of the legislatures, 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment. And that takes some time to do, which is why, as someone noticed in the chat, 1920 is when this amendment officially becomes part of the Constitution as the 19th Amendment. This is, in fact, that means that's August 1920 when this amendment officially is added to the Constitution, which means August of this year is the 100th anniversary of this 19th Amendment. And so we can find in Article 5 this process of being able to make changes to the Constitution. We've used amendments to do many different things. Amending the Constitution has abolished slavery, has extended the right to vote to more people, has made other changes to how the government runs. How is this amendment, though, if we think about this specific example, how is this relevant to our lives today? Thinking about that theme of equality again, thinking about women being able to vote. Yeah, some of you may be able to vote when you turn 18 because of this amendment. If not, you definitely know someone impacted by this amendment. This was a pretty important amendment. It extends the right to vote to more than half the population of the United States, making that we the people, those opening words of the Constitution, mean more people. Great job, everyone. We have a few more documents to take a look at, and then we should have some time for questions as well. So let's take a look at our next document. We're going to move on to Article 6. All right, and let's start again with your observations. What details can you find? What is this document about? Amazing. All right, we've got a state, Hawaii, listed. We found the date, 1963. The Senate of the United States, okay, telling us where this document's being made. Daniel K. Inouye, excellent. What other details stand out to you? Ooh, someone said the senator's oath. Absolutely. Got the 9th day of January, 1963. Very good. Yeah, so we can start to piece this together. Yes, it does. It starts, I, Daniel K. Inouye, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So if we put this document together, Daniel K. Inouye is being sworn in as a senator from the state of Hawaii on this day in 1963. So this is the oath of office. And this idea of this oath of office, we can connect this back to the Constitution. Let's take a look at what Article 6 says. It tells us that senators and representatives and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath of affirmation to support this Constitution. So that's what we're seeing in this document. Daniel, after having been elected, now takes this oath, right, to fulfill what he's been elected to do, to support and defend the Constitution, representing the people of the state of Hawaii. So very simple, Article 6, telling us that our senators, our representatives, our elected officials shall take this oath of office. That's what we're seeing in action. The oath that senators have to take, like the one that Daniel took in this document. Why does this matter to our lives today? Well, what do you all think? Anyone here think they may want to run for office someday? All right. Maybe, see some maybes, see some no's, see some yeses. You also still have plenty of time to decide. But if you do, you may end up taking an oath of office like this yourself someday. Who's planning on voting when they turn 18? Well, even if you don't run for office, you still play a role in shaping the laws of our country by voting for your elected officials who will take this very same oath to support and defend the Constitution, to carry out that work that you all have elected them to do. Amazing. All right, everyone. Well, we have one last document to take a look at today. Jumping ahead to Article 7. Now, I do not expect you to be able to read this document, but I do want to hear your observations. What can we find? How would you describe it? Even though it's difficult to read, can we find any keywords? Oh, some people have noticed the state. We can read state of Delaware, Delaware state. It looks very old. Yeah. What do you see that tells you that this document is old? What makes you say it looks old? We're seeing it's faded, definitely. Oh, someone notes Delaware, the first state, worn out. It's hard, difficult to read. Absolutely. The script, it's handwritten, noting the color of the paper. Definitely. Maybe some stains in some places. Excellent observations. We've also found some names. Seeing that looks like they're talking about the federal Constitution. We've got a keyword there. Very good. Seen some bend marks, some fold marks. Great observation. Yeah, there's an official seal over here. You may have noticed this red square showing us this is this official document from Delaware. Well, let's take a closer look and see if we can piece together what this document says. So I'm going to read it out loud, and I want you all to figure out who created it so we can confirm Delaware created it and why this document was made. So here's what this document says. It says, we, the deputies of the people of the Delaware state, in convention met, having taken in our serious consideration the federal Constitution proposed and agreed upon by the deputies of the United States in General Convention, held at the city of Philadelphia on the 17th day of September, the year of our Lord 1787, have approved, assented to, ratified, and confirmed, and by these presents do, in virtue of the power and authority to us given for and in behalf of ourselves and our constituents, fully, freely, and entirely approve of, assent to, ratify, and confirm the said Constitution. Amazing. So we've got the date, 1787. They're ratifying the Constitution. Great job. It's from the people of Delaware State, or deputies, the representatives of the people of Delaware State. Yes, the purpose of this document is to ratify the United States Constitution. So after the Constitution, right, it's over 117 days, representatives from the different states work on this Constitution, this new plan of government for the United States in Philadelphia, or the summer of 1787. It's finally approved and then signed on September 17th, 1787, but it's not the supreme law of the land yet. In order for the Constitution to go into effect, it had to be approved by 9 states. And so copies of the Constitution are sent out across the country where it's debated, discussed, voted upon. And in this case, Delaware is the first state to ratify or approve the Constitution. So when we see this document, we are seeing this one of these first steps to making the Constitution the supreme law of the land. How does this impact us today? Well, let's think about it this way. What might have happened if Delaware and 8 other states had never ratified the Constitution? Yeah, we think about all the different things the Constitution sets up, our 3 branches of government. It could look very different. There was a system of government before the Constitution, our first attempt at a system of government, the Articles of Confederation. Maybe that would still be in play. Maybe a different structure would be proposed. It's impossible to say. But in order for the Constitution to go into effect, it requires the approval of those 9 states. And Delaware is the first to do so. Eventually, it is approved, becomes that supreme law of the land. And now we can connect it to our lives in all of these different ways we've discussed today. So you all have done a really amazing job diving into these documents with me. Again, all the records we've looked at today are documents from the National Archives. We preserve and protect the historically valuable records of the United States government, which means among our 16 billion plus documents, you can make so many different connections back to the Constitution, this founding document of the United States. So while we've seen a handful of examples today, I encourage you to keep making these connections as you explore history and civics. And as we wrap up today, I want to show us 2 close-ups of the Constitution in the rotunda. Here we can see the first page of the Constitution. What are the largest words on that first page? We the people, absolutely. A reminder that in this government, the power comes from we the people. That opening paragraph is known as the preamble of the Constitution. And let's take a look at our last page of the Constitution. What key details do you observe on this page? Names, signatures, exactly. Yeah, we can see different signatures of some of the authors who worked on the Constitution that long, hot summer in 1787, now signing this document. So a couple of signatures I always like to point out. Of course, we have George Washington at the top of the page. You can find Alexander Hamilton's signature next to New York. Some other future presidents like James Madison next to Virginia. We can see all of these signatures of the men who worked on this document on this last page. And this is the document, this is the Constitution that they worked on and signed on September 17th, 1787, here at the National Archives. Now, Thomas Jefferson doesn't actually sign the Constitution. He's overseas at the time that this document is written. Important signature on the Declaration of Independence, though. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. You've done an amazing job sending me so many great comments and observations about these documents. Hopefully you have some new ideas about how the Constitution connects to your lives today. And thank you so much. I think we have a few more minutes. Let's try to scroll through, see if I missed any big questions. I'm happy to answer some additional questions at this time about the Constitution or the National Archives. I believe we have a couple of minutes for questions. Let's see. What if the country couldn't approve any constitution? You know what? It's impossible to say what it would look like. Sometimes those historical what if questions are difficult to answer. We don't know what would have happened. All we can know what happened, how it was documented, but definitely can guess that things would be different if it had gone the other way. When was the last time the Constitution was changed? Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I mentioned amending the Constitution, how Article 5 tells us all about that process. The Constitution has been amended 27 times. So this is a difficult process. We actually did some research and believe over 11,000 amendments have been proposed to the Constitution, but of those proposed 11,000, very few make it through that process of going through Congress and then to the states, and only 27 amendments have officially been added to the Constitution. The last time the Constitution was amended was 1992, the 27th Amendment, and that has to do with congressional raises. Great question. Those are the First Amendment. Yeah, those first 10 amendments, you may recognize them as the Bill of Rights. We actually saw the first 10 amendments on display in that first picture I showed you. Those were the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. In fact, this Bill of Rights plays an important role in getting the Constitution approved by some states, because the Constitution proposed a system of government that gave the federal government more power. And even though power was shared between these three branches of government, some people worried that it still could lead to abuses of power. So some states, when they passed the Constitution, also submitted ideas for amendments to the Constitution that would help protect people's rights and limit government power. And we can see those amendments passed first by the first Congress and sent to the states for approval. Those are known as the Bill of Rights, and they're also on display in the rotunda. Great question. Oh, thank you all for participating. And you know, if you missed any documents in today's presentation, you can always visit the National Archives website. We have lots of digitized records, including lots more information about the Constitution. You can check out archives.gov. Keep doing your own research. Keep learning more about the Constitution. If there's anything we missed or you want to take a second look at, or you have additional questions afterwards. Oh, someone noticed these. Yes, there are two murals in the rotunda. They're created by an artist for the space, so they're not made in the time period these men were alive, but they show two presentations. I'm sorry I don't have a good picture of them in this presentation, but you can find the murals also on the archives.gov website. The first mural on the left above the Declaration shows the presentation of the Declaration of Independence to the Second Continental Congress, and the second mural shows the presentation of the Constitution. What is the, oh gosh, that's a good question. Some of these are great questions that I encourage you all to do a little research, because my specialty is definitely on history and things in the archives. But yes, things like treaties, things like proposed amendments are still happening. Yes, eventually, right, the Constitution, and you can find more information about that ratification process on archives.gov as well.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, Katie, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for everybody that joined. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.